but we're succeeding on this project, so we're going to go to the yellow portion of this, come back down to our P. So we'll be repeating this letter down here again, and we'll just keep it rolling. Well, it looks like I got a good sharpening out of that one. Let's see if I can keep it. Okay, it's got to tuck it in there tightly, otherwise I have to be very careful, because I'll get that red where it will touch this yellow, and then it'll smear together and make some odd orange colors. So it's tedious work sometimes to get good colors when they're right up next to each other, and not get haphazard and then snag that other color and smear it together. And yellow is notorious for this, but also the white, when we're going back at the end and coloring our whites in white, well, that's going to be a problem then also. And yellow will even pick up the pencil markings sometimes and smear them into your work as well. So it takes patience. And it's not for... Patience isn't everybody's thing. Now, once you get pretty good at some of this, you can work fast and accurately. But it takes a while to get that level of achievement, and also the confidence that goes with it. People ask me sometimes, how is it that I can draw so easily? And a lot of it's simply the confidence that I've achieved over decades, most of a lifetime of applying myself toward these skills, drawing and painting and doing design work and making pottery and photography when I was in college too. So it looks like I'm going to have to sharpen up again, but this is coming together really quite quickly. You might notice my paper is starting to curl up, and that's usually a good sign. That's an indication that what you're doing is stretching the paper. And when you start stretching the paper out, although it's hard to notice with the naked eye, but you're stretching the paper out, and that's what's causing it to curl like this. But that is a sign that you're putting a lot of pressure against that paper, and that's a good thing, because that's what it takes to get opacity. Or you just got to go over it a million times lightly, and most people don't have that brand of patience. Most students I've seen don't have that brand of patience. But the letter of O seems to go pretty quick there, doesn't it? So once you know what you're doing and your skills are practiced up, you can make this stuff pretty quickly, and also quite well, I might add. Now, yellow is one of these colors that's so saturated, so bright, sometimes you can't see the specks of white showing through. So you got to kind of give it a really good look. And I think we're going to move on now down to our letter P, and then let's see if we get through E and A by the end of the day. That'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll be making extraordinary progress. Let me sharpen some pencils. So, moving on here, we're going to slide down here to the letter P, and just like we did it up here, we're going to repeat it down here. So we have to go over here and erase some of our preparatory work out so it doesn't show through our coloring. Now in this case, it probably wouldn't show through the blue anyway. However, I'm not willing to take that chance, and I would encourage you not to be willing to take that chance with it either. It looks like I got some blue left on the end of this pencil, so I'm going to just get started with my work here. It looks like we'll be using blue and red here in the letters E and A again, and then finishing up with black. And if that gets us through one session, then that's a huge achievement. So we should try to be able to get more done each day as our skill and our strength of our hands improves and our eye-hand coordination improves, it should be easier, something we call the learning curve, for us to do additional quality work at a slightly higher speed. So each day our production rate should go up. It's pretty typical that in an art project it goes slow at first, and then as your skills build and as you start seeing the project begin to come together, you get a little bit more motivation. It's one of these situations where at first it seems like you have a really long ways to go. It's like a trip to Florida, and some people, they don't worry about it, but some people, immediately it seems like it's going to take too long to get there for them. So you have to just be patient. And once progress begins to be made, you probably will be okay, and you'll see where you're going with it, and that it's worth the time and effort that you put into it. I want to stay away from that black for right now and go over here and continue working along this portion of the letter P. Now this project happened many years ago. I had a student who was new to my class, and she was several weeks behind the other students, and we had a different design project at the time. And I had a magazine, and this magazine had in it these flags that are used in the navies and the boating world around the shipping industry around the world. And so I experimented with that idea, and I had her spell out a message. She had to just make one up, which was more difficult than we had anticipated. But and then she spelled it out using these flags, and I thought that would make such an interesting idea for a design project that it had a lot of the qualities in it that I wanted to try to get across to my art students. And that's, communicating a message, but not necessarily writing it out. That would be more appropriate for language arts class. So for visual arts class, and especially design unit, we want to make something that communicates a message, but does it through colors and shapes rather than letters and words. And it worked really well with that very, very first student. And so, since then, this has been the 6th grade project over the many years, and it's evolved and gotten better over the many years, and now it's one of the better projects that I think anybody does in any art program, in any middle school, anywhere. It really has a lot of visual interest to it. Some people know exactly what it is when they see it. Other people have to ask, and then you explain it to them, and then they'll ask you what it says, and if you have the worksheet, then you can give them the worksheet, and they'll have to figure it out for themselves. And that means they will have to look at your piece of artwork for several minutes. So that's what we call viewer engagement. Viewer engagement is what all of us are trying to get when we make artwork. We want people to look at our artwork. We don't want them to not look at it. So viewer engagement is when you can get somebody to take a look at your artwork and analyze it and stare at it for a long period of time and try to figure out what they're looking at and engage with it. That's a huge achievement when you're making visual art. It's a huge achievement when you're making music. Just to get somebody that'll sit there long enough to listen to your music is a huge achievement. If you've got something to say in a speech, getting people just to sit still long enough so that they will listen to what you have to say in your speech, that's all very difficult to do. So this project is able to achieve that through the use of its colors and shapes and its visual interest. So it's been very successful all over, at least the community of Xenia. These projects are everywhere in this community. And a lot of parents that I've taught recognize this project when their students or their children become my students, and I see them at open houses, and we reflect on this project quite frequently. And some of them, think back on it and it wasn't really the best project for them, and some people say, oh, I remember that project, here's what mine says, and they may even still have it to this day many years later. So it's a good project, and it's popular with the students, and it has a message, and it causes viewer engagement to happen, so people look at it and they have to figure out what it says. And that's all the things that you're trying to achieve when you make a piece of visual artwork. You want people to look at it. You want people to know what you're trying to communicate with them. And we do this with just simple shapes and colors in this particular case. But in other types of artwork, they're much more complicated. Alright, so we're closing in on the end of the letter P for right now. And we'll come back to the white portion later. That's very risky, so we save it for last. We don't want to get in a rush and smudge some colors together. We're trying to avoid that. That's why I'm using this index card under my hand, so that I do not smear my colors, and so that I do not get dirt on the back of my hand that will end up on my drawing. And it will pollute the colors also if you're not careful. Now we're down to that last little strip I've been avoiding. I'm going to go back and dress up some of my white portions, the skip-overs, so that they look opaque, which will always be the requirement on the artwork that we make in Warner Middle School, as long as I'm the art teacher. Opacity is a good thing. Most people don't want to see the primer on the car that they've been working on that gets painted, or under the old paint on the house when they have their house painted by a house painter. They want to see the new color, and they want it opaque. And they don't want to have to say, hey, why didn't you just cover up that old paint? So we're covering up paper. Everybody knows what paper looks like. Nobody knows what this artwork will look like until we make it. Alright, this is really a tight little corner, and I feel pretty good about that. So, letter P. So we've done 1, 2, 3 letters, a couple to go, and we'll be done for the session. Like I said, usually these projects take about 10 days from the moment that we first start drawing it out until the time that we're ready to grade it. Especially in the physical classroom. And sometimes there's a lot of interruptions in a physical classroom, so when we're e-learning like this, there's a lot fewer interruptions. There's announcements a lot of times when we're doing a physical classroom. A lot of times students get called out of class, and then as a result they need to be caught up when they get back, and that's kind of tricky to do. And all of these group lessons are kind of slow going sometimes, but that's no reason not to do them. Now we're back to the letter E again, and of course we did the letter E up here earlier, so we're going to continue on that, doing the upper portion, because I don't want to drag my hand through it, but it's going to cause some tight work in between these areas right here. So I'm going to just start up there, I think, and try to trim it real carefully. Carefully getting this. So even though E is an easy letter, the circumstances for it are complicated here. So we've got this black bordering it on the 2 corners, and then of course the yellow sometimes is not so easy either to work up next to. And if we're not careful, this blue will smear into it, and it will cause us to have some greens that we weren't quite expecting. Green's not one of the colors in this project, so it looks like I was pretty accurate there. Let's work on this sideline right here. Alright. So sometimes it's nice to have some music, sometimes it's nice to have just somebody to chat with, as long as you're not disrupting their work right next to you. When you're making art, a lot of times people that are involved in it will ask you what you are doing and then that kind of can slow you down as well. So when you're sometimes out painting in a park, people will stop and talk to you a lot and look at your work, and that kind of slows your progress down. But you know, they're naturally curious. They simply just want to see what's going on, and it's unusual to see too many people out in the park painting at the same time. But I've been out with classes before, and you know, it's almost like an art show for the people that are just walking through the park. They come through and check out what we're doing. Alright, we're making pretty good progress. Gotta keep it coming. This letter and the next one to do. And that will be a session. So time can go by really fast when your mind is occupied. And when you're making artwork and focusing on things, a lot of times it seems like the time goes by very quickly. And so for the occupied mind, art is a good way to pass time, especially if you're a person that has some time on your hands. You can always read a book or make some artwork, or if you're not easily bored. So a lot of making artwork is overcoming the tendency to just be easily bored, is to find interest in things that a lot of people would never even find interest in because they're shallow. So artists are typically pretty deep thinkers. Now we're all just art students in the 6th grade art class. That doesn't mean you can't start thinking deep thoughts. And this deep thought is, why can't we make blue by mixing other colors together? It's one of the mysteries of art. It's got something to do with our visual cortex and our brain, I suppose. I wonder what the other art teachers are doing right now with their students. Probably making them do art history lessons and learn about famous artists online and write papers and stuff. But in this class, we're just going to do it the way we would if we were actually in class together. And so I'm going to post the videos, and you all are going to follow the directions, and you're going to be able to make a piece of artwork. And I'm hoping that we will all get back together again in the physical classroom, and we'll be able to see these things in person. But it's going to be a challenge for everybody. And if you're a student who's simply making up this work because you missed class, well then I will see you back in the physical classroom, and we'll have a chance to look at your artwork in person. And for those of you that maybe are in my actual physical classroom, then this is a review sometimes, or if you missed a day of class, you can go back and check out what we did, how we drew certain letters. There will probably be more videos like this as time passes. Alright, progress is being made. So that blue, I'm just going back and dressing up some of the thin spots, making sure the corners are nice and sharp. I don't have smeared together colors. Black into my yellow and blue into my greens. We don't have any green in this one, but you make it if you're not careful by mixing that blue and that yellow together. Looks pretty good. Let's move on to this other piece of red, and then we've got one letter left, and that's going to be a day's worth of work, and we're making good progress. Okay, so got to sharpen that pencil. It's always good to have a sharp pencil when you start these kinds of things. So now we've got to be very careful about working down this sideline right here so that we don't get our red and our yellow mixed together, because that will start making some strange orange colors that we did not anticipate if we're not careful. Likewise up here where the blue and the red meet, it also takes a great deal of control. although the color it would make would be some sort of violet color or purple. So we might not be able to notice that quite so easily as we would notice the orange where the red and the yellow might meet. If you're keeping up with the progress I'm making here, then you're doing a pretty good job. I don't know about anybody else, but it can be tiring staying focused for 45 minutes to 50 to an hour many times for young students, especially 6th graders. So this is also a patience building operation. So one of the goals of educating people is to build sustained focus, their ability to do long attention span operations. So a lot of life requires a long attention span, and art, one of its goals is to simply get students of all types, whether they're really good at art or not, but to get them to focus on what they are doing for long periods of time. In a lot of classes, the class is broken up into multiple little pieces so that a young person's mind can rest a little bit between each 10 to 15 minute session. In art, though, it's important, and it's also important in your other subjects, to be able to focus for long periods of time. So this is one of the places that we practice that. So one of the points of making art, one of the points of teaching art to people, is to help them develop what's called sustained focus. That means the ability to have a long attention span and to not be easily bored just because something super exciting is not happening right at this moment. So the super excitement in the art project is when you start seeing it start to come together. And I think that when we started this very first letter in the upper left hand corner, what seems like a very long time ago, but was really only one class session ago, it seemed like we would be coloring forever. And we've made a lot of progress in this session today. And we get to that letter, the second letter A here, that's going to be a very good day of production. And then we'll come back and we'll make it to the next row by the third session. And that's a huge achievement. But I'm betting some people are starting to get sore fingers. I'm betting some people's hands are cramping up by now. And that's natural. Got to work through it. Take a break if you gotta. Now, if you're in a physical classroom, the clock would always be ticking on you. But in the E classroom, the clock is not quite so important. And so you can feel free to take a break and maybe get a snack. But don't forget to come back to what you're doing here, right? Because the point of doing this is to end up with a finished piece of artwork. And if you don't stay focused, you'll train yourself not to stay focused. And as a result of that, you may struggle in a lot of other things, not just making an art project. So you have to train yourself to stay focused. You have to train yourself to actually care that, you're going to tuck this red right in that corner real careful like, and you're going to trim it in on that line real careful so you get quality work, so that you have good eye-hand coordination and strength and control. And so when you learn how to do these things, you're on your way to making fantastic art. Drawings, paintings, sculpture, prints, all of these disciplines are part of making the visual arts. And it all starts with design. And we're doing that right now. We're starting to develop our message. That's a pretty good looking piece of work. Let's get through the letter A, and we'll be done for the day. So I'm going to sharpen my blue again. Seems to be using a lot of blue today. Seems like we were using yellow a lot in the previous session. A lot of blue today. Well, A is up here, white on the left, blue on the right, black in the triangle. Better dust that chunk of debris off of there. And then we'll come back to the white at the end of this project. So I'm going to trim it right up that line. Now see, low risk operation here for the letter A, because we're just blue up again. Oh, I forgot to do my erasing. Got to erase this before I color over. Although with the darker colors you might not be able to see it anyway. But you should erase it anyhow, just because we're trying to develop good working habits. Okay, but like I was saying, we've got blue on blue up in here, and so this should go pretty quickly. So sometimes, you know, you don't have to be quite so strict and careful about what you're doing between colors when they're the same. But when you've got a light color like yellow or white, you got to be careful with that. And you also got to be careful when you've got black working against those colors as well. But this is starting to come together quickly. And I hope nobody's getting serious hand cramps by now, and they can't go on, because we've got a few more days of this, so you may have to rest your hand, stretch it out. Alright. There's something hard on my drawing board underneath there. I don't know what it is, but oh, well, gotta hang on to the pencil. So we're back to trying not to form a pattern there. So it's got a nice smooth surface to it. And sometimes these things come out. Students will say to me that I'll show them one, and they'll say they didn't think it was made with colored pencils. They'll say, no, that was used, they've used paint. And I'm like, no, didn't use paint. Colored pencils. And then they'll feel the surface of it, and they'll be shocked by it. But they shouldn't be. People who are dedicated to what they're doing make good artwork. Alright, we're closing in on it. And once we get done with the black notch in there, I think that will be a good session for one day. And we have made tremendous progress in just a couple of sessions. There we go. I want to sharpen that pencil again. I'm going to go through a whole blue pencil before the end of this project, I'll bet. Now, some of the stuff has got only a little bit of blue in it. But in this case, we've used a lot of blue in the very first row. Very first two rows, that is. Well, we're going to have other projects such as this, so we'll be next we'll be going to some drawing, and we'll be drawing some things that are going to require us to break things down once again into grid squares. So we do a lot of drawing of squares in this class while we try to understand what we're looking at, and we're making tremendous progress for not being in a physical classroom with each other. So I'm hopeful that we will continue to, conduct Xenia Warner Middle School art in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, even though we can't be physically together sometimes. So here we go. We've only got a little bit more to do, and we'll be done for the day. We'll have done 5 letters today, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4. This will be 5. So yesterday I think we only got 4 done. Well, it looks like we're back in session again here for really simply another day of just coloring on our project. And there's a lot of that happens when you're making an art project. So in the 6th grade, a lot of times what I'm trying to get you to do as an art student is to develop a long attention span and perseverance, and that can get you a lot of places, not just in art but also in the world. And that's what we're going to keep doing today. We're going to try to get a few more of our squares done and use up some more of our colored pencil. And maybe discuss some things along the way in order to get that done. So it looks like when we left off, and we're trying to get, you know, about 5 squares done each day to pace this project out to where we can trim it out with some colored pencil at the end, make sure all the white parts are addressed and colored white, you know, clean up any erasings that need to be made, so that we take it from just being a class project to being you know, something that's a work of art, really, and something you would be proud to hang on your wall or display in a contest or an art show somewhere. And so when we left off, it looks like we were getting ready to start the letter R. And in some cases, we've been able to skip down to the next letters wherever they've been duplicated at. And that helps us make some better time as well. And some of the letters that are coming up are more complex than others, and some, like the letter Q, is simply just a lot of coloring of the same color. So let's get started here, and I've got my little slip sheet to make sure I don't get my artwork all smeared up. And so we got to start, of course, by erasing this letter R. Now, a lot of people will not do this, and then they color over top of it, and it really affects the beauty of the artwork. And so, you know, when you're erasing something, take a little time to do it. A great deal of making good art is not getting in a rush about having it done. Now, it is true there are deadlines, and your projects will have due dates, and it's important that you stay paced about your work so that you can get it done by the due date. So it looks like we're going to be, if we look at our little reference sheet, which is shows us that the letter R, Romeo, is a yellow, it looks like a plus sign or yellow cross, and it's got red in all of the corners. Now, if you were doing the 7th grade lesson, of course, you would have a worksheet similar to this that would have different colors on it, that we're going to address that during the 7th grade lesson. Okay, but for now, for the 6th grade lesson, we can use this as our reference. And so it looks like I need to sharpen up my pencil a bit here, and I'm able to get a good working point on it. Not so sharp it'll snap right off immediately, but good enough that I can get some good detail work done. And you know, if I go with the red first and I happen to snag some of the yellow, then no big problem, right? But if I go with the yellow first and snag some of the red, then the red will be smeared back into the yellow. So I should probably do yellow first in order to avoid that. So just craftsmanship issues like this can really, and decisions that you make early on, can really affect the outcome of the piece of artwork dramatically if you're not careful. So I am going to practice what I preach, and I'm going to go with the yellow in the middle first here. Okay, and I'm just going to get busy with it. And I can see already that I didn't erase a line very well, and it is showing right through that yellow colored pencil. And it is driving me nuts already. I'm just barely got started. Now, sometimes you got to live with these mistakes. Other times you can, you know, practice some clean working habits, and it's going to be okay. Alright, I think that's going to be alright. Let's get all that dusted off. Now, back to work. So, when you get going first thing, sometimes, you know, you got to stay organized. You got to be able to get your work done, focus, long attention span. Now, I color a little bit faster than most of the students do, and I've been doing this for a while. But what takes me about 27 minutes of time on one of these videos seems to be about 40 minutes worth of production time for a student. So the videos may seem brief to some of you, but I'm betting that you're not really keeping up completely with the pace of the work I'm putting out. So it's important sometimes simply to just pause the video, or maybe run it on a slower speed, and then you can just really kind of work right along with the instruction that you see in front of you. But if that's not your way of doing business, then you can simply just pause it, and then when you catch up with a certain part, then, you know, let the video run again, if that's the way you like to work. Now, strangely, I'm seeing a little bit of the line. You can probably see it right there showing through my layout work, showing through my coloring, and I'm a bit disappointed in that, but I'm going to have to live with what I've made, and that's the way I make you all do as well. So, you know, at the end of the 10 days of production time, maybe 11 sometimes. Sometimes we do a worksheet, and that worksheet takes a day or so to finish up. But Usually there is no less than 10 days of production time on projects and a couple of days of lectures before that. However, you have to pace your work out or you will not get it done by the due date, and it seems like that's 10 days seems like a lifetime, I'm sure, in the mind of a middle school art student. However, it gets on you really fast once we now I have to be very careful here. It gets on you fast because what happens is there's about 3 days of laying it out and drawing up to it, and then there's, you know, some time of coloring involved, and all of that goes by very quickly. If you were in a physical classroom, it'd be no more than, I've got a bug, there we go, too bad for him. It'd be no more than 10 days total, probably. But these are long attention span projects, so simply stay focused and try to keep it between the lines if you can and make beautiful work. Alright, so, and I think you can see that it's important to erase the layout work that we do really completely, because it does show through your coloring, and I'm coloring very opaquely, but that pencil marking is showing through. Now right here, I've got to be super careful not to catch any of that black colored pencil that I colored previously and smeared into my yellow. It would make kind of a weird green color. Alright, I'm just now addressing little skipped over areas that I might have. Trying to stay away from that old pencil marking right there. Alright, I think I can move